Good evening, everyone. My name is Aiden Fisher, and I'm from Randolph, New Jersey. Tonight, I have the pleasure of serving as one of the youth chairs for this special event on behalf of my synagogue, that is Temple Adath Shalom in Morris Plains, New Jersey. We are so glad you could join us from all over the country. In light of the occurrences in Israel over the past few weeks, it's truly our pleasure to get together in support of Israel. We are looking forward to an interactive program where many of your questions will be answered through the chat at the bottom of your screen. Please chat any questions directly to Celine Leeds. As Team Israel prepares for the Tokyo Olympics this summer, the Jewish National Fund USA has worked together with the team to create the Be the 25th Player campaign. We hope you enjoyed this short video.
This July, Team Israel will take 24 players
to Tokyo, Japan for the Olympic Games.
You can be the 25th player.
The 2021 Olympics
will be an explosive return to normalcy for the entire world.
We'll be there.
In the dugout,
on the field,
at the opening ceremonies.
Help us get to Tokyo and win a medal.
Be the 25th player.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Jeff Feinstein, who will moderate our questions tonight. Jeff is a longtime supporter of Team Israel and baseball enthusiast from Short Hills, New Jersey. Jeff?
All right, thanks, Aiden. Thank you so much for everyone joining us. We actually did a very similar Zoom at the beginning of the pandemic. We're welcoming back Eric as a guest speaker for this Zoom as well. Just for some background, I've been involved with Team Israel for about 10 years now. Amazing organization, amazing people, and obviously JNF has been so supportive. And we're going to get into some great question and answers. This is going to be interactive, so feel free to ask questions in the message box. Celine and Sam can help to let everyone know how that's possible. And we're also going to be doing some polling questions, just to see people's knowledge of Team Israel, people's knowledge of the Olympics, and also people's knowledge of Jews in baseball, which is something that certainly everyone on this Zoom is very passionate about. And just as a little bit of background on our guest speakers tonight, Sam or Celine, maybe you can put up the screen with the pictures. We're going to meet them in a second. Perfect. All right, three good-looking guys. So Jared Lakind is a pitcher for Team Israel. He's originally from Texas. He played high school ball at Cypress Woods. He was selected for All-American in the Aflac game. Drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, they convinced him to start his pro career versus going to University of Arkansas. In 2016, he was selected for the minor league AA All-Star game. He held a record for consecutive scoreless frames pitched, which I think was 22. He went on to pitch for the Marlins and is now with the Lancaster Barnstormers in the Atlantic League. And he also pitched for Team Israel in the 2017 World Baseball Classic. Eric Brodkowitz is also a pitcher for Team Israel. He's originally from Potomac, Maryland. He was a first-team All-Division at Winston Churchill High School. He went on to play for this small unknown school called Yale. He was first-team All-Ivy. Now he works for a small company called Goldman Sachs. In his spare time, obviously, he plays in the Olympics. And I made this joke last time, and Eric will probably give me a hard time, but I said he's every Jewish mother's dream. He's an Olympian, professional athlete, and obviously he's a great career ahead of him. And also Peter Kurz is going to be joining us too. And if you don't know Peter, you don't know Israel baseball. That's the joke that I make as well when I'm introducing him. If there was a Baseball Hall of Fame in Israel, he'd be the first inductee. And he is the architect of all the World Baseball Classics, getting into the qualifiers in 2012, 2012, winning the qualifiers in 2016, and obviously making it to the Olympics, which is an amazing accomplishment. Tears, sweats, fundraisers, travels all over the world. So thank you, Peter, for all you do for Israel baseball. So now let's just start the questions. I think Eric is in the middle of somewhere. So I don't know if he's on camera yet, but we have Jared and Peter, and maybe Eric, when he gets on camera, can tell us a story about where he is in the middle of the Midwest.
Hey, I'm walking into my house right now.
All right, perfect. So we'll start with Jared and Peter. And I think we're just waiting to get Jared on the, there he is. Okay, perfect. So why don't we just start, no disrespect, Peter, but the players everybody wants to hear from.
So
let's start with Jared. Jared, can you tell us your story about, how you got started in baseball and ultimately how you came across, Team Israel and made Aliyah and where you are today?
Oh, that's a long story. I'll try to cliff notes on it, but so starting out playing baseball, it was mostly my dad and my grandpa. I think he's actually on this Zoom call. I think they're listening to him, so shout out to them. They were a big inspiration in giving me all the opportunity and the knowledge to become the best I could be in any aspect of hitting, pitching, just the knowledge of the game. And just taking that forward, flash forward a couple of years from then, I think Peter knows a little bit more on how I became more, more recognized as a Jewish baseball player. But I do remember there was a guy from a Jewish newspaper, I believe, when I was in Aberdeen playing short season A ball. And he came in and wanted to do an article on me. And I was like, nobody wants to do an article on a short season A ball guy. And so from then, that was probably 2014. I started kind of looking more into it. And then Peter reached out to me in 2017 for the the World Baseball Classic qualifiers in Brooklyn. And I said, yeah, I want to do that. And then we did that and ended up earning a spot in 2018? Yeah, 18. Did the World Baseball Classic, and we competed real well in that, and then ended up reaching out back to Peter. I know because I was playing with Blake Galen at the time, and he had mentioned something about the Olympic team, and I was like, man, I want to see if I got what it takes, and reached out to Peter, and we started the ball on that. And I know it's kind of like the Cliff Notes story about that, but yeah, in short, that's kind of the process for me, getting to where from 4-year-old Jared to 29-year-old Jared getting ready for the Olympic Games. So
that's great. Well, your family must be very proud, and I'm sure your grandpa, if he's watching, is beaming. Watching his son lead a Zoom with 100 people or so. So, Eric, thanks for joining us. Where are you, by the way?
I am in Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Okay. And what's going on out there?
I'm playing independent ball, just like Jared. He's in the Atlantic League. I'm out here in the newly formed Pioneer League. But yeah, just trying to get better and trying to do everything we can to prepare for the Olympics. Great.
Well, walk us through your background as well, because I know it was a little bit of a different path. Obviously, you played college ball, and Peter might have found you through different paths since you weren't maybe an affiliated ball at the time. So, love to hear your story and how you got to playing in the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say that growing up, my family and baseball were sort of always very intertwined, and a big part of my family culture and identity was Judaism. And so because of that, baseball and Judaism kind of came up along the same path together, whether it was spending time with my dad and working on things, whether it was hitting or fielding or ultimately pitching, working with my grandfather in the backyard, sort of all of that really sort of, the unity of family and baseball and Judaism kind of all came together for me. So my grandfather that I mentioned previously actually taught me everything that I know for my bar mitzvah as well. And so, he would come to my games, and then he would also not come to my games because he was nervous that if he had come to the games, he would jinx it and stuff. And so he's kind of a very, he was very superstitious and always wanted success. And so it was baseball was something that, was a huge part of my life and a huge part of anyone who's played this long life growing up. How I got started with Israel baseball is, ultimately it was my senior year. We were playing against Columbia in the Ivy League championship game. I pitched 7 innings really well. We wound up losing, I think, 2-1 in the bottom of the 15th inning or something. I thought my baseball career was over because I wasn't really planning on, playing professionally afterwards. And so, I was going to go work at Goldman Sachs instead. And so I thought my baseball career was over. And, a week or two later, I get a call from Eric Holtz, who's the manager of the team, who had reached out to me because I guess, his son played at Columbia. And so we played against Columbia all the time. We played him a couple of times a year. We played him 2 times that year. And, he'd seen me pitch a couple of times. He looked down at the scoreboard and at the roster, and he looked at my name and saw Brodkowitz and was like, all right, this kid is 100% Jewish. So, reach out to my coach. My coach reached out to me, asked if I was interested. And to me, the opportunity to keep playing baseball competitively, to be able to represent Israel, to become a citizen of the state of Israel, it all came together in one really just cool opportunity packaged as one. And so, jumped at the opportunity. I assume we'll get into it later, but we had a really successful 2019, just, a lot of really cool experiences. I've been to Israel, I believe 2 or 3 times now with the team. And so, yeah, it's been a really, really cool experience. And, just the culmination of a lot of things that it's family, Judaism, baseball that have all been a very big part of my life.
That's amazing. Celine or Sam, can we put up that first question if we could before we get to Peter? And I think it's relevant for this intro. And we'll give it a minute. Perfect. So the question is the number of baseball teams or countries representing baseball in the 2021 Olympics. And if you can just all click, you can pick 6, 10, or 14. And we'll give it a minute. And let's see what the answers are. And Eric and Jared, you can't pick. All right, we can pop up the questions whenever. I mean the answers. Let's just see what the poll says. Okay, great. So it was actually pretty spread out. 6 and 10 were the biggest winners. 14. I don't know if there's 14 countries that play baseball, so that's great. And that just really shows you how impactful and amazing this accomplishment is, that all the countries in the world, all the people that participated in the Olympic qualifiers, all the countries that put together a team for the World Baseball Classic, Israel is one of 6 teams in the Olympics. And people don't realize how amazing, impressive this accomplishment is. And the architect of everything, the person who did the impossible, not once, not twice, but 3 times is Peter. So Peter, maybe you can share your background, how a guy who was born and raised in New York, moved to Israel, took his passion and turned it into this amazing thing that has gotten worldwide attention, on every publication, New York Times, everywhere. So we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming on here. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here in Israel, but I'm always happy to join my friends at the JNF in the United States and talk about baseball. I think you heard from Eric and Jared 2 things that are connecting them. One is baseball, obviously, and the second is their Judaism, and both being Israeli, all 3 of us being Israeli. So for me personally, when I was growing up as a kid, I grew up in New York, as Jeff said. I was born and raised in New York. In 1967, 2 weeks after the 6-Day War, I went with my family to Israel. We spent the summer in Israel. and that had an amazing effect on my life. And the second thing that had an effect on my life 2 years later, when I was 12 years old, the New York Mets won the World Series. So the Miracle Mets. So those two things together, those two crossroads together in my life is where I am today. I've been living in Israel now for 32 years. I made Aliyah 32 years ago, raised my family here. My 3 kids are living here. Very happy to be here. About 20 years ago, I got involved with Israel baseball. We're all volunteers in the organization. It's a whole volunteer organization. There's over 1,000 kids and adults playing baseball today in Israel. And both these guys I reached out to, along with another 25 players. We were in the WBC in 2012 and 2016 and 2017, as everybody has said. But the main achievement is now in 2019, the run we had for the Olympics. It's a little bit different because the WBC, because of the heritage rule, we could have Jewish American ball players helping the Israeli ball players to reach the level that they reached in the WBC. But in the Olympics, everybody has to be Israeli. You have to be Israeli passport holders. 25 guys made Aliyah, some of them in 2018, some of them in 2019, some of them in 2020. But all these guys made Aliyah, went through the process, came to Israel, have been here at least 2 or 3 times. They live in the States because they're doing their baseball in the States. I mean, Jared in Lancaster and Eric somewhere out there in Idaho. But that's because that's where baseball is. There's no baseball at that level in Israel. We're hoping to reach there. We're getting better. But they've always come here whenever I ask them to come here to visit us and help us here with the program. And it's been fantastic. And in 2 months, we'll be in Tokyo. So we're looking forward to that.
Great. Let's go to our pitching duo on the call. So this past year has been crazy. Obviously, you know, there was no minor league affiliated ball to my knowledge, and independent ball was a little bit, you know, not too many games. What's it been like to train for something like the Olympics without knowing when that's going to take place, and then without having somebody to throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball to? I assume your parents or your buddies probably weren't up for that. So why don't we start with Jared? Maybe you can share how you've been preparing for this and how you prepared for this a year ago when the world was shut down. I'll turn over to you.
Yeah, so I was very, very fortunate with the setup in Texas where I was. I played last year in a pop-up league of 4 teams in Sugar Land, Texas, and with the professional baseball population in Houston and Austin and San Antonio, all those guys were able to form a 4-team league and play about 2.5 months. So while I would say 98% of the professional baseball players out there playing, we were the 2% that were able to log some innings and at bats and compete and against each other. It was the same guys you saw all the time, but it was fun. It took away the stress of the pandemic for, even if it was 2.5 months, still took that, and we were able to play ball. And fortunate enough for me, outside of that, training where I'm training and having the support group of guys that I've been training with for years, we were still able to, you know, get into the weight room when we could and get on the field and throw bullpens and really continue as if nothing were happening. So it was very, very frustrating to hear that they were going to push it back 1 more year, you know, because when we're ramping up and it was very close, you start getting the butterflies like it's spring training times 10, and then you get hit, knocked down, and having to recalibrate and restructure your whole off season again. So, but yeah, for me, it wasn't as terribly bad as for competing and maintaining that competitive edge and just going out there and having fun. So.
Great. And Eric, how about you?
Yeah, so, you know, early in 2020, I was still in New York before the pandemic was really a big thing. You know, I'd been going to Eric Holtz's place pretty consistently. getting, bullpens in January and February, and really, gearing up, just like Jared was saying, to really make that push and be as ready as we could be. March 7th, I left New York, and the pandemic definitely followed into the United States. So, it became a very big thing. Obviously, the Olympics was pushed back. Everyone knows that. It was something that was very difficult because, for me, to be working a full-time job plus also training and then just to extend that for another year, while it's something that I feel very, very fortunate and blessed to be able to do. Definitely a significant time commitment, but it's something that, I've been very fortunate to be able to do and would gladly do it in a heartbeat again. And so now, now that we're back on field and now that we're playing again, and it feels like, I was very fortunate that, everyone around me was sort of happy and healthy and had a relatively good setup in the pandemic. And now, that I can say that with all of this behind me, and now that I'm getting back out on fields again and pitching against live hitters again, and, it almost feels like the last 5-ish months of just throwing into cages and everything just didn't even really happen. So it's great to get out there again. It's very exciting to be where we're at right now, to have sort of all that in kind of the rear view mirror and really just get out there and go play and do, what we love and be able to represent the state of Israel. And whether it was last year or this year, it's just a really exciting opportunity to compete on an international stage with Israel across our chest. So we're doing everything we can to be as prepared as we can, and very happy to be where we are right now, and looking forward to, I think it's 60 or 59 days from now when the Olympics start.
That's great. Peter, I think is it 59:60? I'm sure you have a clock or that says exactly how many days.
I don't know. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I really can't tell you how many days it is. Approximately that.
Well, I'm going to give you a layup question from the audience. How many are all the same players from the 2020 team coming back for 2021?
First of all, the last team we had was in 2019.
Right, 2019. Excuse me. The last, I guess the audience wants to know, when we were supposed to have the Olympics last year, did any players get injured, or any players decide, you know what, this is too tough a trip to make?
No. Well, first of all, when it was delayed, I asked all the players if they were still on board, and 100% of the players said they are still on board. That was for sure. But after the 2019 team succeeded in reaching the Olympics, we reached out to an additional 6 players, and they came on board, including Jared. Jared was one of them who came and made Aliyah after we had qualified already. Jared, Ryan Lavardway, who's playing for Cleveland, Josh Zaid, who's coming back after 3 years after playing so well for Team Israel in the 2017 WBC, is also part of the extended roster. We haven't really chosen the traveling roster yet of the 24 guys that are going. And there's another guy who joined us just pre-COVID, really came to Israel literally 4 hours before the country shut down. And that's a guy who has very little MLB experience, named Ian Kinsler, 14-year MLB player, 4-year All-Star. He's with the team. We just had a week of practices in Arizona. Both Jared and Eric were there, and I think they both met Ian Kinsler for the first time there, and they can say that he's an incredible part of this team, a real integral part of this team, and he'll be crucial. He's a big anchor in the infield, and also just a great guy to have in the clubhouse. So all the guys are there. Yeah. We've got a battle going on of which 24 players we'll take, but listen, they're all part of Team Israel. We have the European Championship also in September to go to. We certainly have tournaments going on after that. So we need the players, and we also need the help. As you saw in that little video of the 25th man, the 25th player, we're looking to the whole Jewish community to be the 25th player and to help us reach Tokyo, to reach Italy, to get to these achievements in baseball.
Yeah, and I've seen, Peter, firsthand, really how difficult it is to raise funds and get support for everything going in Israel, not just for the Olympic team, but we're also, JNF and Peter are leading the charge on building baseball fields in Israel. getting equipment for the kids. It's not like there's a Dick's Sporting Goods where you can just go in and buy gloves and spikes and such. So let's pull up a poll question, because I see there's so many good questions that I think will lead into the next question. Celine is sending me questions about Aliyah and such. The next question that is actually somebody asked, how many Jewish players are currently on the Major League 25-man roster? And let's see what people have guessed. And Peter, you can't answer this because I know you have it memorized exactly where they all are at all times.
I've been in touch with all.
Let's see the answer. Let's give it a couple more seconds. Okay, good guesses. Three is a little bit too low, so 6 and 10. 10 was the highest. The answer is 6 currently right now, and I'm sure Peter can name them by heart. So Peter, maybe you can just walk everybody through the process for the past 10 years, how you've been identifying players with Jewish lineage that can compete for Israel in all these international tournaments.
It started in 2011, actually, together with Brad Ausmus, when we tried to find players for the WBC team. At that time, it was more difficult because people hadn't heard about Team Israel playing on the international circuit. Finding the Cohens and the Levies and the Brodkowitzes is not difficult. The Feinsteins is not difficult because of their last names. But finding people like Lakind and Ty Kelly and people like that is a little bit more difficult. There was a great documentary movie made called Heading Home, which shows, as an example, Scotty Burcham. Somebody came to me and said, listen, I saw his Facebook page and his mother looks Jewish, maybe contact him. So I did contact him, and he was indeed Jewish because of his mother. And other players, other players are Jewish. Ike Davis, for example, who used to play for the Mets. You just know that he's Jewish, so you go out and you approach these people. But some of them are more under the radar. Ty Kelly, for example, was his father was Catholic and his mother's Jewish. And right away, he actually met some kids in a minor league game and was signing some baseballs, and the kids had yarmulkes on, kippahs on. And he said to them, you guys know I'm Jewish also. And somehow that filtered back to me. So I found out about that. Today, after 10 years of recruiting Jewish ball players, a lot of ball players get to me, and I know who they are. They come to me, they turn to me. I've got fathers, telling me their 12-year-old kids are fantastic players and they're going to make the major leagues, and, keep an eye on them in 10 years. Max Fried, for example, who's one of the 6 major leaguers, actually came to Israel. I don't remember exactly what year that was. I think maybe it was 2015 or 2014, to play in the Maccabi games. He was with Team USA. He was a 15-year-old kid. It was an under-18 team, but he was probably their best player, and he's certainly blossomed into one of the best major leaguers out there. But we're keeping track of them all the time. We have the next WBC coming up in 2023, and you'll be seeing some new Jewish blood coming in there and playing for us as well.
And can you name the other 5 25-man roster Jewish ball players? These are the ones that are not eligible for the Olympics.
There's Jock Peterson on the Cubs. There's Max Fried. There's Dean Kramer, who is eligible for the Olympics. Dean Kramer is an interesting guy. He pitches for Baltimore. His parents were both Israelis who went to live in California. He was born there. He learned baseball there, but he's been with us every summer up until his professional career. He's come to Israel as a kid. At the age of 15, he played for our national team, for our adult national team. He was actually the MVP in one of the tournaments in Europe, and he speaks fluent Hebrew. He actually has been interviewed by Israeli journalists in Hebrew on Zoom. He's a great kid, and we hope he has a brilliant major league career. We'll miss him for the Olympics because he's the only one who's eligible to join us for the Olympics. But we're happy that where he is and everything else. There's a guy on the Marlins, Richard Blyer, who actually played for us also in 2012. And the 5th player, I don't remember. This is the 6th
Kevin
player.
Pillar.
Kevin Pillar, thank you. Kevin Pillar is not actually playing now because he's on the injured list. Anybody who saw that, so get hit in the face by the baseball. Kevin Pillar also was supposed to play for us in 2017. in the WBC, but he had just come back from an injury to his thumb, so he couldn't play for us. He'll play for us in 2023, I'm sure. And there's one more player who
Rowdy Tellez.
Tellez is not in the major leagues. He's not in the major leagues now. He's in AAA. He was sent down to AAA. He's not the one. In AAA, there's at least 12 or 13 ball players, including our own Ryan Lavarnway, including Ty Kelly, who signed with Seattle, including Zach Weiss, who signed with Seattle. Both those guys are going to be future Olympians.
Peter keeps track of all the Jews in baseball. You know, he's always recruiting. So there's about 10 more minutes. So I'm just going to fire away some rapid questions for our pitcher doers on the line. So let's start with you, Eric, in short version, just so we can get everyone's questions answered. What was the Aliyah process like? I guess proving your Judaism, going to Israel, and getting citizenship.
Yeah, so, they tried to make it as easy for us as we could, but, we still had to go to Israel. And I think Peter was a big part of making it as easy as it was possible. We went to Israel for, I think it was 10 days or so. But before that, you had to show proof of Judaism. You had to get a letter from your rabbi and all that. I don't remember exactly what else there was, or some sort of background check, et cetera. But yeah, I think the right of return is very real. And I think, the ability to make Aliyah for any Jew that wants to is definitely a real opportunity. And it was certainly a pretty easy and smooth transition for us.
Okay. Jared, this question is actually from my mom. So thanks, Mom, for doing this. And of course, she's going to change the mood. But this is a good question for you because you've been all around minor league baseball, and you came from Texas, where Judaism is not as, it's not as prevalent as it is in the Northeast. Have you ever experienced any, I guess the word is maybe anti-Semitism or, Jewishness? What's that? Maybe you can share any stories that you have. And if you haven't, that's great. But I assume that at some point somebody questioned, who you are and what you believe in.
Yeah. Just growing up in Texas, I think the closest synagogue that we went to was about an hour away. And, but as far as anti-Semitism going on in Texas, it wasn't anything kind of what you're seeing today, I guess, in New York going on. I saw the last couple of days with people getting pointed out and having bad stories happen. And for me, I guess it went as far as, during Hanukkah, Christmas time, and it pops up. Well, hey, Jared's Jewish. I'm like, oh no way, that's cool, man. You get presents every night. And I was like, yeah, it is. I guess cool, guys. And for me, it didn't bother me. I'm very proud of who I am, and just the culture. Kind of going off of Eric about Aliyah. That whole process, it just made me even realize how special all this is even more, and growing up and representing who we are. But yeah, as far as growing up in Texas and never really had experienced anything that pops up to me into my mind, anything outrageous. So.
Great. Peter, we're going to keep on the rapid fire questions. Is Ryan Braun currently involved with Team Israel? Maybe you can tell people who Ryan Braun is if they don't know.
Ryan Braun is a major leaguer who just retired. His father was also born in Israel. So he did not have to make Aliyah in order to get Israeli citizenship. He was granted that by the fact that his father was born in Israel. I did approach him. I was talking to him for a while. But unfortunately, he decided not to play for Team Israel this time around. He just had other things going on in his own personal life and everything, and decided not to play for us. I just wanted to mention something also about anti-Semitism, because I think it's a big issue now. Certainly, making Aliyah and becoming Israeli gives all these guys a little bit of a different angle on the whole anti-Semitism thing. Israelis are very proud of who they are. They're very part of the new kind of Jew who's out there and fighting all the time, and doesn't really stand down to any type of anti-Semitism. And I think it's true today as well. And certainly this team, when we're going to be doing our tour of the Northeast, in a month or so is very much of that tradition of coming forward and saying we're proud of being Israeli, we're proud of being Jewish, and we're out here, we're being there. We're going to have obviously very, protection and everything, security around us. But I think that's part of being this team now and being Israeli is coming forward and saying, listen, we're proud to be Israeli, we're proud to be Jewish. We're going to the Olympics, and that's a huge achievement. There's certainly been cases of anti-Semitism against the team when we went primarily to Europe. When we go play in Europe, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe. Subtle anti-Semitism, subtle things, but it's still out there. And actually in the Far East, where we're going in Japan, we were there 3 years ago with the WBC. There's almost no anti-Semitism. And it's really a breath of fresh air to go to Japan, to go to Korea, where they're very interested in Israel, they're very interested in the Jewish people and what we've achieved. And really, very little outward anti-Semitism, and we look forward to being there and competing.
Great. Eric, we got a few more questions. From your perspective, you played with Israel in competitive baseball for some time, and now you're experiencing pro baseball too. The question is, what are Team Israel's greatest strengths and weaknesses, and how are they going to compete? United States just released their roster, and it includes some perennial all-stars that are now retired. How do you think they'll fare, against the competition?
Yeah, I mean, we're going for gold. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's ultimately what the goal is. I think, I don't want to say there's been divine intervention throughout the process, but if there were a couple of games where it felt like God was smiling down on us and influenced the outcome of a couple of the games, I think, one of the games we were playing against Sweden, we were down by a run or so in the bottom of the ninth. We were hitting, and it started absolutely pouring rain to the extent that the opposing pitcher couldn't throw strikes anymore. And eventually, we wound up winning that game by, I think, a run. And it just, it's one of those things that everyone on the team has this shared cultural identity, and everyone really wants to win because of that cultural identity, because of that one unifying spirit and what it really symbolizes. So I think that, while the U.S. may have a bunch more formerly retired former big league players who have, a lot more time and a lot more experience than we do, there's something really special about this team that everyone's really driving and pulling and rooting for each other. And it's, very much one singular goal that everyone's going to chip in and do their part. There's no egos on the team that are going to overwhelm each other. And so it's, it's a really special team where it's just all about winning, which is a really cool experience. And so, maybe that doesn't specifically answer your question. We got a lot of guys, a lot of really good players, up and down the lineup, up and down the pitching staff. So clearly we're going to be out there and we're going to be competing on a talent basis. Absolutely. But then, just on top of that, something special extra that I kind of really experienced in Europe, we have that going for us as well. So really good combination.
Yeah, I've been on some Zooms with some of the players, and I remember Peter had us on a Zoom with Danny Valencia, who you probably gotten to know. And somebody asked him, how are you going to compete? And he said, what do you mean? We're going to win. And everybody laughed, and he looks him straight, and he said, no, we're going to win. We're going to win the Olympics. And Jared, we'll maybe finish off with you, and then I'll turn it over to the JNF team. You obviously come from a background in Texas. You played pro ball. You had scholarships at University of Arkansas. You've been around. Tell us what this feeling is like. Now you have 70 people on a Zoom listening to you, and all over the world, people are, you have T-shirts with your name on it, in Israel. What's it going to be like to put on the white and the blue and represent a country that now you have such a deep connection to?
Oh, it means the world. Just being able to have a little glimmer of experience in the WBC. I mean, it was huge, for lack of a better word. It was just a huge experience, and being able to meet from the WBC to the Olympic team is a lot of different faces and personalities that I didn't get to experience in the European championships, but being able to meet the guys in Arizona last week was huge. I thought it was I felt that singular motion towards one goal, and that Eric is talking about, and you just feel it walking into the clubhouse. And no, there's no personality that's bigger than anybody else, and that's where I think, yeah, Team USA has all these guys, that's great, cool, but baseball is baseball. It's anyone's game. And when you have what we got, even though I just experienced it just in a couple of practices and some games in Arizona, you can definitely feel, I've been on a lot of teams in 12 years, and you can definitely feel the environment is a lot different than what pro ball is. And it's all hands on deck. It's every pitch means something, and everybody's pulling for everybody. And even in the spring training, everybody's trying to, you saw Ian Kinsler helping guys, which I grew up watching Ian Kinsler. I even told him, I was like, man, this is so cool that you're like right here. And I'm talking to him about hitting, even though I haven't hit in years. And it's, he's telling me, and, talking to Danny and just everybody just pulling together, trying to work on winning the gold medal and bringing it to the state of Israel. So
that's great. Well, thanks the two of you so much for joining. I mean, I can't tell you how much it means to everybody. We're all here in New Jersey and watching from afar, and just like everybody is listening to now, whatever time it is, whatever time you're playing, we're all going to be tuning in and watching and rooting for you guys. So thank you for all you do, and it means so much. So just before we turn it over to JNF, Peter, anything you want to add? We're all here because of you, because of this vision you had 10 years ago that nobody thought was possible. Anything you want to add to the people on the call that are here to support you, here to, to be fans of Team Israel? And, I'll turn it over to you for final words.
Just to be the 25th player to join Team Israel out there on the field. It won't be the last thing we do. You'll hear more from us in the future. We're building fields in Israel. We're building 2 fields now in Beit Shemesh and Ra'anana. So we definitely could use your help together with the JNF. Project Baseball, Lou Rosenberg will say a few words. A shout out to Lou, to Celine from the JNF, to Paul for bringing all this together, to all the Lakinds who are on this call. I think there's a lot of you on there. You've got a wide family, and it's great. To all the supporters out there, to Mark Ratner, to Harvey, who's out there, who I saw. Just fantastic. Thank you for your support. We need it. We will need it in 60 days when we go to Tokyo. We feel it behind us, and that's what's great about it. And thank you all, and you'll hear from us. You'll see us in Tokyo. You'll hear from us, and we'll be making a lot of noise. Thank you.
That's great. And the last question before I turn over to Lou is, how do we watch the games during the Olympics? I think the best way to know what channel that it's on and what's streaming is social media. So if you're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, follow Israel Association of Baseball, follow Team Israel. There's a bunch of different accounts out there. So I'm sure they're all going to be spreading the word when the schedule comes out, and you can wake up at 2 a.m. to watch the games. So now I'm going to turn over to Lou from JNF, who's going to share some ways that we can get support and get involved. And, thank you so much for joining, Eric and Jared. Thank you so much. And obviously, Peter, it's 3 o'clock, so we'll let you go back to bed.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lou Rosenberg. I'm the executive director of JNF in Los Angeles, and I'm also the lead professional for Project Baseball. And I've been involved with this with Peter for about 7 years now, and I'm often asked, like, why is JNF involved with baseball? Because we're your voice in Israel. This is what we do. We make lives better. We improve infrastructure. And one of our partners is called Nefesh B'Nefesh, which helps people make Aliyah. And there's been stories of families in Israel with young kids coming from North America who have struggled in their transition. But you know what's helped the kids? Being able to go and play Little League Baseball. So that's a plus. We're also, as Peter mentioned, we're building a field in Beit Shemesh, which is between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And this is going to be phase A of the field. But it's also a great opportunity so the field will present for the national team to have a proper field to train on. But we're also doing something called Baseball for All, teaching the game not only to Israeli Jews, but to Israeli Arabs. And when the team qualified for the Olympics, it became the first team from Israel since 1976 to qualify in a team sport. The Israeli Olympic Association did not think that they would ever need a budget to send 24 athletes plus coaches and administrators to the Olympics. That's a big financial commitment. And the Israeli Baseball Association with Peter came to JNF and said, let's partner up on this. Let's get something going here. And that's what we do. We come in and this is what we're going to do. We are going to raise the money so Israel could have a prominent place in the Olympics. And in my opinion, yeah, we started off raising money for baseball fields, but to me right now, this has become a Positively Israel campaign. I cannot think of a better way to promote Israel on the world's largest sporting stage and to combat all the Israeli hate, all the anti-Semitism, the BDS, than seeing our flag raised on that medal podium. To see our flag raised, and as Peter says, when we win the gold medal, to have Hatikva played, I think that will be something to every Jew in the world that maybe this will become our Olympic moment now. Maybe we'll be able to get past the tragedy of Munich. So this is where we need people's help. This is where I'm asking you to join us. And if you could put up the slide with our donation opportunities, we've created some very nice incentives for donations. And this is my jersey, because I'm a $5,000 donor. My Team Israel jersey, which comes personalized with my name and favorite number on the back. And you could also get this jersey for a $5,000 donation. We have plenty of opportunities, and we just really are encouraging for everyone on here. We would love nothing more than 100% participation. Celine is going to be sending out a follow-up email with the link to donate. Her information will be on there. If you want to talk to me personally about Project Baseball, I'm more than happy to answer any questions also. The team, as we mentioned, is going to be opening another round of training on the East Coast in July. And for a $25,000 donation, you could throw out the first pitch at the game in Brooklyn and receive all those incentive items below. Celine and her team is also putting together opportunities to have kids be the bat boy, bat girl, to coach first base for a couple innings, to do stuff with like, a team photo with you and your family and the team. So there's plenty of opportunities. We're just asking for your support to help us. And I cannot thank you enough for joining this call tonight. It's so great to see some people from Los Angeles who have been strong supporters of this. There's another gentleman on this call I want to give a shout out to, Doug Liebman, who's a very important part of our Project Baseball Task Force. So join us. Become a member, become the 25th person of our team that's going to win the gold medal in August. So thank you so much for allowing me to join you tonight. And at this point, I would like to, we're going to have one of our young leaders from one of the synagogues, we're going to turn it over to you for a few words.
Thank you, Lou. Good evening. My name is Brendan Lakind from Randolph, New Jersey, and I've had the pleasure of serving as one of the youth chairs for this special night on behalf of my synagogue, Temple Shalom in Sarasota, New Jersey. I have a few announcements to share before we close out our event tonight. Jewish National Fund USA is excited to be heading to Israel this October 10th through 14th for a very special national conference on wheels. Please join us for this amazing once-in-a-lifetime trip. Our This is Zionism campaign is just getting started, and we encourage you to join Zionists from all over the world to share your vision of what Zionism means to you. Lastly, we are excited to be hosting Team Israel here in the New York area on Thursday, July 8th in Rockland County, New York, and Sunday, July 11th. They will be playing the New York Fire Department baseball team in Brooklyn. Stay tuned for more details on both of those dates. Please look out for an email from us. There will be information about everything I just mentioned, including a link to donate if you have not done so already. Before we say goodnight, I want to thank Jeff Feinstein for doing such a great job moderating tonight with our players and Peter Kurz. We would also like to thank our event chairs from Temple Das Shalom, Aiden Fisher, Bill Friedman, Michael Tejar, and Michael Tepperman. We are also grateful for all the support of the Temple Shalom event chairs, including Rick Barron and Mark Ratner, who also serves as the chair of the JNF Project Baseball Task Force. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Your support and friendship means so much to all of us. Good night.